Hello to you all, this is Obihen Horn of Africa. We have special edition regarding current issue of our country. I have a guest from Gothenburg, Sweden, Dr. Khalid Jemal. Really, I appreciate your commitment, Doctor. It's a pleasure to have you on our program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. We are proud of what you do, Obihen Horn of Africa.
You know, the current situation in Ethiopia, there is clash between the federal government as well as the TPLF group. How do you see the conflict between these two bodies?
Before I answer this question, basically, I would like to differentiate the government, the TPLF, and the state. There is something called the state. The government is basically representing the state. The way I see this is, it is a conflict between the TPLF as a group and the state, Ethiopian state. That's how I see it. So before I go addressing your question, but I would like to go theoretically, briefly describing the basic characteristics of the state. As we know, the state have a territory, and it has to be sovereign on this territory. Sovereignty is basically divided into two. That is external sovereignty and internal sovereignty. Mm-hmm. This external sovereignty, the state is basically has to be able to defend itself from foreign aggression, for example. There is no question about that. For example, we remember we have history that we are proud of, for example, in Adwa, where the state defended itself from colonizers. And we also remember how the Ethiopian state has defended itself from the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea, we remember. So there is no question when it comes to the state defending itself from external aggression. So that is external sovereignty. But when it comes to internal sovereignty, so modern state also strive for internal sovereignty, that is to be the sole authority within the territory capable of making and enforcing law. So internally, the state has to be able to make laws and be able to enforce laws. In order to assert this legitimacy, it has to have this monopoly of power within the state. So any power or any force or any group that challenges this authority of the state, and the state has to be able to challenge. It must be able to challenge this.
The measures taken by the government. How do you observe that thing?
Coming back to your question, the way I see the conflict is between. I see the conflict between the federal government and TPLF is that it is a conflict that resulted when the federal government tried to enforce its legitimate authority to enforce rule of law. I believe the government is forced to use military means to respond to the crisis resulting from a series of constitutional violations made by TPLF, which is directly challenged to its internal sovereignty of the state.
Thank you. When we see the government is exerting its effort to stabilize and restore peace in Tigray region as well as to unify the country, how do you see the government's effort?
Well, my reaction to the action taken by the government is that it is a necessary action to respond to a series of constitutional violations made by TPLF. The first violation that put Tigray regional government in collusion course with the internal sovereignty of the state was the holding of regional election in defiance of the decision made by the House of Federation and other state institutions to delay the election due to COVID-19. It established, that means the TPLF established a regional election board to carry out the election in violation with the constitution, which exclusively gives the right to the federal election board. Out of the 5 competing parties in the regional election, TPLF won by 100%, where the whole election process and the result was considered void by the House of Federation. Also, the regional government led by TPLF defied the internal sovereignty of the state. The government's approach to manage the crisis was by using its soft power, such as like withholding federal budget to the regional government, and hence forcing the regional government to resolve the crisis in a peaceful way. However, the regional government led by TPLF decided to escalate the crisis even more. Out of many, the boldest defiance it made against this constitutional order was limiting the movement of the national army stationed in the region, the Northern Command, it means, from discharging this duty, pushing the crisis further to the edge. The regional government blocked a newly appointed general to the Northern Command from assuming his role, and from assuming his role, and sent him back to the capital from Mekelle airport in defiance to the federal government. The immediate cause that triggered the conflict was an attack made by the regional armed forces in Tigray, known as Liyu Hail, on the Northern Command stationed in the regional government to defend the territorial integrity of the country. This was in complete defiance of the country's internal sovereignty, which forced the national army to confront the fort to assert the internal sovereignty of the state. That is how I see the action taken by the federal government on TPLF.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Almost the government has made remarkable victories on this group. Now they are claiming ceasefire, as well as they are saying let's negotiate. Is that fair at this time, making a negotiation?
When it comes to negotiation, I think we have to see that, I mean, the state, to be a state, you have to have rule of law. I mean, the constitutional order is violated. I mean, you can't have negotiation as long as you have a state. To have a state, there has to be a monopoly of power. A rule of law has to be there. But rule of law is violated. The national army is attacked, and the force which is governing the regional government in Tigray, it is in defiance with the state institutions like the House of Federation, the Parliament, It is defying everything that the state has. So there is no negotiation that can be undertaken under these circumstances before any kind of negotiation can start. I think the rule of law must be asserted, and everybody can have this negotiation once we have this rule of law in the state.
Awesome. Now, people of the country are supporting the government in bringing this group to justice. How do you see their support and their action?
At the beginning, I mean, the calculations that the TPLF made, you know, the TPLF has been ruling Ethiopia for the last, for 27 years. And it is supposed to build state institutions that function impersonally. That means a state that functions based on laws. But instead of that, within the state structure, it just have maybe it is loyalties. The people who are loyal to them, especially people from Tigray, they put those loyal people within the state structure. So they depended on that rather than having with this impersonal state structure as a source of power, they depended on personalities, the people who are close to them, as a source of power. So the things that before, when they start this crisis, I mean, in order to have this transition process to their advantage, they wanted to put the country in a crisis first. So that's exactly what they did. I mean, to dismantle the state structure and to put the country in some sort of transition so that they can have a say which they don't deserve. So that is what they planned. But when they attacked the army, people saw that this is not the right thing to do. And even if, you know, some part of the country have differences with the government,
Sure.
but there is a red line that nobody is allowed to cross, which is a rule of law and the respecting the institution, especially the national army is a symbol, or it is the vanguard of the country. So when TPLF started to attack the national army and the whole country lining up behind the government, which is, I think, the right thing to do and a reasonable thing to do. But unfortunately, TPLF didn't expect this will happen. I think the country is moving in the right direction, and the people lining up behind the government is also the right thing to do. I think they have to keep up keep the support that they are doing for the government.
That's great. That's great, really. I appreciate that. This illegal group hiding himself in the people of the Tigray region. What the government should do to protect or to move these people from this crisis, or just in order to save these civilians, what the government should do?
Absolutely. That's exactly what they are doing. This is a TPLF group. They have been ruling the country for more than 27 years. When the people of Tigray, in large, they have exactly the same problem that the other part of the country has. It is only a small group of the elites who benefited from the bureaucracy, the corrupt bureaucracy that they have set. I think the government has to get rid of this kind of groups from the country, so to lift the country from the problem that it is in, to ensure a speedy success of this operation. First, the government should educate the public and inform the international community how it is handling the crisis in a transparent way. That's the first thing it should do. It should constantly communicate with the people as it is doing now. More work needs to be made in identifying and locating highly valued military targets. So whenever the government wanted to attack the enemy, they have to be able to, prioritize. They have to be able to identify and locate highly valued military targets. In addition, the efficiency and precision of these surgical strikes need to be developed in a continuous way, I think.
Okay, that's good. What's the role of international community, especially the Ethiopian diaspora, in supporting the federal government to calm down this problem?
You are the people on the ground. We are a little bit further away, so we get this information from different directions. I think for the international community to contribute toward taking the country to a sustainable state that contributes greatly to the stability of the region, the international community has to put its focus on the sequence of events that led to resort to the military action. A deeper look on the different narrative coming from different directions helps the international community where to optimally put their resources to help resolve the crisis. As an example, the government has maintained a narrative right from the beginning that the immediate cause that necessitated the military action was the attack of the Northern Command of the National Defense Force by the TPLF militia.
Sure.
However, the narrative coming from TPLF changed a lot before finally admitting the claim made by the government. First, TPLF claimed that the Northern Command sided with them against the government. As more evidences that support the government claim started to surface, they started saying that they have armed themselves with the military equipment that they have seized from the Northern Command, maybe better than the National Army. They even claimed that they have, 80% of the weaponry of the country. They have said something like that. As more and more evidence came out, they admitted that they have attacked the Northern Command unprovoked to prevent, quote unquote, imminent threat from the government. That is what they said. So the line, the narrative that the government has kept was legitimate, and finally they have admitted that as well. The other busted claim by TPLF is that it blamed the government force for the genocide it committed in Maikadra, in Tigray region, region it administered, which resulted in hundreds of civilian deaths. Later, their claim was contradicted even by Amnesty International report that proved otherwise. Hence, the international community is advised to evaluate the information they get carefully before they take any action. Finally, as days goes by, the moral legitimacy of the state to restore to military means is getting more and more clearer. That is why the nation and nationalities in the country are lining up behind the government. Hence, the international community should support the state in its effort to enforce the sovereign authority which is defied by the TPLF.
The TPLF illegal group are disseminating various propagandas which undermine the federal government as well as the people of the country. Even they have no dignity for their people, the Tigrayan people. How the international community observe this propaganda? How do you get it?
I think, as I said before, their propaganda, it doesn't have a lasting impact. That means, as I said before, for example, first they said the Northern Command has sided with them. They can't keep that claim because evidence has come out to show that, eyewitnesses, the military that stood against them, they have come out and spoken. So it couldn't last. So they could. The propaganda that they are doing doesn't have a lasting impact, I believe. For example, they said they have with the weapons that they have seized from the Northern Command, they are ready to fight the federal government. Now, when the federal government, with a legitimate right to enforce rule of law, embarked with a military offensive, they claimed that the whole national army is fighting them. You see, that means they said they are fully prepared to defend whatever they are defending. So when the government went there with the military, they said the whole national army is fighting them. But the world said, okay, you violated rule of law. You are defying the state. So the government has a legitimate right to uphold rule of law. And when this claim can't take root, they claimed that, okay, it's not only the national army which is fighting us. It is also the Eritrean government which is fighting us. But there is no proof for that. And the Eritrean government also said they are not part of this. Is an internal issue for Ethiopia. And when this couldn't hold, they started to internationalize the conflict. For example, by firing missile to Eritrea, and the international community, especially the U.S., They told them that you cannot internationalize this crisis. So when they couldn't, when this argument couldn't, the efforts that they have been making to internationalize this issue couldn't take hold, they started even claiming that they are being fought with a weapon that doesn't even exist in Africa. You see? So
Sure.
the lies that they have been making, I think a little bit of a deeper look, the world is recognizing that the government has a legitimate reason to use rule of law, and the world is also, the international community is also recognizing this. I think, as I said before, as we see from the evidence that from the couple of weeks, the evidence that we have seen it, that the propaganda they have been making doesn't have a lasting impact, and the government has to continue especially this fact-checking process that the government started is a good thing. They have to constantly keep communicating, keep this transparency that they have been doing, and I think victory will be close.
Let me bring you one question. Do you think this problem or this clash between the government, the federal government, and the Tigrayan region, or the TPLF group, actually, it's a TPLF group, the root cause of this is the reforms taken place in the country in the last 2 years? Is that the reason or the root cause for this clash?
I think the root cause is related with the state building, and it is related with this power struggle in the north and the southern part of the country. The root cause for this problem is about equality, I think, because it is about equal representation in political power,
Sure.
economic prosperity, and cultural representation as well. The southern part of the country has been fighting for a very long time, and the country has also been responding to the question which were being raised for decades. I think the country is responding to that, recognizing the nations and nationalities within the country, but there are forces in the north, especially the forces represented by TPLF, the TPLF group. They claim that they cannot be seen in an equal term with the population in the south. For example, once I listened to a conversation between a journalist from TPLF and Subhat Nagga, which is a veteran TPLF leader. The discussions that the journalist was asking Subhat Nagga that, okay, what they are telling us, that means the federal government, what they are telling us is you have to administer your region, and the budget that you are the power and the budget that you are going to have is based on your number, the number of populations that you have. How can we accept this? He is questioning this veteran leader. How can we accept this? That means they are not ready to accept the fact that we are all Ethiopians. People from the 110 million of Ethiopian populations are equal. That is what the country is striving for. That is what the state of Ethiopia is trying to assert, that every citizen of the country is equal. But they don't want to see themselves like that. That exactly explains the power structure in EPRDF, for example. In EPRDF, there are 4 parties forming this EPRDF. That is the TPLF and the OPDO and the party from Amhara region, and the southern nation nationalities. And TPLF, which represented 5 million population, they have almost veto power and everyone else. So the country wanted to move on. This is not sustainable. It is not sustainable for the country. So the country wanted to make change. And that change was not acceptable for them. You see, I think this is inevitable. The country is ready to go forward. Also, they are resisting this change. So I think this is inevitable, and we have to move forward. And I believe the root cause of the country is inability to accept equality within the country. And I believe the country is moving in the right direction to affirm that every nations and nationalities, every Ethiopian citizens are equal and equally represented and equally benefit from the prosperity of the country as well.
Okay, thanks, Doctor. What's your message at the final to the diaspora regarding this issue, to support the government as well as to show their solidarity in this regard?
I think that there should not be any doubt in this regard. For anyone. I mean, although we have maybe you can have a lot of frustration towards the government, the way they are doing things, on the efficiency, on the economy, on development, on political representation, so on and so forth. There can be a lot of questions that can be raised, but we must have a state that it is a state that can it is through a state that we can answer all those questions. You see, we are not allowed, we cannot allow any force or anything that can challenge the authority of the state. Now the authority of the state is being challenged. The military, I mean, the military who is in charge of the territorial integrity of the country is being challenged. The state institutions are being challenged by some groups. So we cannot allow this. So we have to put our differences, the questions that we have, aside for now, and we have to stand for the sovereignty of the state. I think people are recognizing this, even the diaspora, which have been against the state for different reasons. I think that people are starting to recognize this issue, and the others also. That is the advice that I have. So this is a national security issue. This is about the sovereignty of the state, and I think everybody has to stand with this. That is my final message for everyone in the diaspora.
Dr. Khalid Jemal from Gothenburg, Sweden, we really appreciate and thankful for your time and your commitment.
Thank you very much for inviting me as well, and keep up with the good work that you are doing.
Thank you so much.